The assassin moved like smoke through the crystal corridors of the Velkan Palace, and Sergeant Marcus Hale saw him 3 seconds before anyone else did. 3 seconds was enough. Marcus didn't shout. He didn't reach for his radio. He stepped sideways from his post at the throne room entrance, placing himself between the figure in the shadows and the small Velkan princess who had wandered from her mother's side to chase the luminescent beetles that drifted near the floor. The child was 6 years old. She had no idea that the dark shape sliding along the far wall carried a pulse blade designed to end bloodlines. Marcus had been stationed on Velkov for 11 months. He knew the palace rhythms the way a sailor knows tides. He knew which guards rotated at which hour, which corridors filled with servants before the evening meal, and which sections of the crystal walls cast reflections that could hide a crouching figure if the bioluminescent panels above were dimmed for the Queen's meditation hour. Someone had done their homework. Someone had waited for exactly this window. The assassin was Velkan. That surprised Marcus for exactly half a second. Then, it didn't. Betrell always wore a familiar face. He crossed the throne room floor in 8 steps, keeping his body angled so the Queen's attendants at the far dais wouldn't register alarm. The princess looked up at him with wide silver eyes, the kind her species had evolved for deep-sea darkness thousands of years ago. They caught light like mirrors. "Soldier," she said, in the precise, formal Velkan that even children used with humans. "You are not at your post." "No, Highness," Marcus said quietly. He crouched to her level, blocking her view of the far corridor with his body. "I need you to walk with me to your mother. Right now. Without looking back." The princess studied him the way all Velkans studied things they didn't fully understand, with complete, unblinking stillness. Then, she placed her small hand in his and walked. Marcus moved with her toward the throne dais, keeping his pace measured, his back straight. Behind him, he heard the softest whisper of boots on crystal. The assassin had broken from cover. Marcus had maybe 4 seconds before the man closed the distance, and the Queen was 20 meters away, elevated on the dais platform, partially screened by her attendants. No clear line of sight. No way to signal without causing panic that would scatter the princess into open space. He made a decision. He passed the princess's hand to the nearest attendant, a tall female elder who had served the Queen for 40 years, and said 2 words in Velkan: "Protect her." Then, he turned around. The assassin was already mid-stride, pulse blade drawn, its edge throwing blue light across the crystal floor. He was fast, even by Velkan standards, which moved at a tempo that made most humans look like they were thinking through water. He had clearly trained for this moment. He had probably trained for years. What he hadn't trained for was Marcus. The first thing Marcus did was nothing. He stood completely still, hands at his sides, and watched the assassin come. Not from fear. Not from hesitation. Because stillness, his instructor had told him once in a rain-soaked training yard on Earth, is the most disorienting thing you can show a man who expects you to run. The assassin hesitated for a fraction of a second. Marcus moved in that fraction. He didn't reach for the sidearm at his hip. A pulse weapon fired in a crystal palace would scatter lethal shards through the room. He didn't reach for his blade either. He closed the distance instead, driving forward into the assassin's striking arm with his shoulder, redirecting the pulse blade past his own ribs by millimeters, and wrapped the man's wrist in a grip that came from years of close-quarters training designed for exactly one purpose: to neutralize without killing when killing would cause more damage than it solved. The assassin was strong. Stronger than Marcus expected. He pivoted, threw his weight sideways, and managed to drag Marcus 2 full meters across the floor before Marcus locked his feet, dropped his center of gravity, and simply refused to move. That was the moment. That was the moment the Queen, who had risen from her throne at the first sign of motion, saw everything. The assassin straining with every muscle in his body. Marcus holding him, unmoving, one hand locked on the weapon wrist, one forearm braced across the man's chest, expression calm, breathing controlled, eyes tracking exits and threats with the quiet efficiency of a man doing something he had done 10,000 times before. The blade hummed. The crystal room was absolutely silent. And Sergeant Marcus Hale held on. The Queen's name was Velshan or Rumeketh, and she had ruled for 31 years. She had survived 2 succession wars, a planetary siege, and a poisoning attempt that had killed her first consort instead of her. She did not panic. She did not scream. She descended the dais steps in 7 measured strides and stood 6 meters away from the struggle, watching with the silver eyes her daughter had inherited, and She said nothing at all. Her silence was a command in itself. Every attendant in the room froze. Every guard who had come flooding through the side entrances at the sound of motion stopped at the perimeter, weapons raised but not fired, waiting. The assassin felt the silence too. It changed something in him. His movements became more desperate, less precise. He drove an elbow toward Marcus's jaw, connected, snapped Marcus's head to the side hard enough to blur his vision for a full second. Marcus tightened his grip and did not let go. Blood appeared at Marcus's temple. A small cut, probably from a ring or brace on the assassin's arm. It ran down the side of his face in a clean line and dripped onto the crystal floor, where it caught the bioluminescent light and glowed faintly amber. The Velkan guards at the perimeter saw it. Several shifted weight. The elder attendant who held the princess turned the child's face away. Marcus felt the elbow hit land again in the same spot. His vision strobed. He breathed through his nose in a long, controlled exhale and thought about the weight distribution in his feet, the angle of the assassin's torso, the precise mechanical problem of keeping one very strong, very motivated being from turning a blade toward a child or a queen. He solved it the way he solved all mechanical problems. Methodically. He shifted his left foot 6 inches, changed the angle of his forearm brace, used the assassin's next surge of force as momentum and redirected it, spinning the man off balance and face first into the crystal wall with controlled, deliberate force. Not enough to kill. Enough to stop. The pulse blade skidded across the floor. Marcus kept his forearm across the assassin's back, pinning him to the wall, and, finally, for the first time, looked at the queen. She was already looking at him. Her expression was not gratitude. It was not relief. It was something Marcus had no word for in English and only a rough approximation for in Velkan, a word that translated closest to recalibration. The look a navigator gives the stars when they realize their charts were slightly wrong. "Step back," she said. Not to Marcus. To her guards. They stepped back. "Are you injured, Sergeant?" Her Velkan was formal, the register used for diplomatic address, not for speaking to personnel. "No, Majesty," Marcus said. His temple was still bleeding. They both knew he was lying. Neither of them mentioned it. The queen turned her gaze to the assassin, now held against the wall by 2 of her palace guards, his face blank with the particular blankness of a man who understood exactly what the next hours held for him. She studied him for a long moment. "He is of House Velora," she said. It wasn't a question. One of her advisors stepped forward from the far wall, confirming with a single nod. The queen absorbed this with no visible change in expression. A full house implicated in an assassination attempt on their sovereign. The political weight of it was enormous. The personal weight, given that House Velora had sworn to her directly at her coronation, was heavier. She showed neither. "Sergeant Hale," she said. "Majesty." "You left your post." The room was very still. "Yes, Majesty," Marcus said. "Protocol requires you to remain stationed at the entrance during meditation hour." "It does." "And you left anyway." The princess was unguarded and there was a threat closing on her position. "I made a judgment call." The queen was quiet for a moment. Then, a human phrase. "Judgment call." "Yes, Majesty." "What does it mean, precisely?" Marcus considered. "It means the rules didn't account for what was happening, so I used my own judgment to fill the gap." The queen looked at him for a long time. Behind her, the princess had broken free of the elder attendant and was now standing at the queen's side, watching Marcus with those mirror-silver eyes. She still held one of the luminescent beetles loosely in her cup hands. She hadn't dropped it in the chaos. She'd protected it. Marcus noticed that. He filed it away. "Your judgment," the queen said at last, "appears to be sound." She looked at his bleeding temple one more time, then away. "See to your injury, Sergeant." She turned and ascended the dais. The audience was over. Marcus stood where he was for a moment, listening to the room resume its motion around him, guards securing the assassin, attendants moving the princess back toward the inner chambers, advisors converging in tight clusters to begin the political containment of what had just happened. He walked back to his post at the entrance and stood there, hands behind his back, face forward. The cut at his temple dried in the cool recycled air of the palace. He didn't touch it. 3 days after the incident, Marcus was summoned to the Queen's private receiving chamber. Not the throne room. The private chamber, which had bare crystal walls and no attendants and looked, in the thin morning light, more like a cave than a palace room. Velkhan at their most formal were magnificent and cold. Velkhan at their most private, Marcus had learned, looked almost human. The Queen was standing at the far window when he entered. She did not turn around immediately. "My daughter told me something," she said. Marcus waited. "She said you crouched to her eye level before you spoke to her. She said your voice was quiet." The Queen paused. "She said she was not afraid." "That was the goal, Majesty. Most beings, when they feel fear themselves, transmit it. It is biological. It is difficult to override." She turned from the window. "You did not transmit it." "I've had practice." "Yes." She studied him. "I have reviewed your service record. 11 months here. Before that, the Kerith Station conflict. Before that, the Oran Corridor evacuation." She paused at each name, and Marcus understood she was not reciting. She had read the details. "You were injured 4 times in those postings." "Seriously, twice." "Yes, Majesty." "And still you stand at a door for 11 months. It wasn't quite a question. "Someone has to," Marcus said. The Queen looked at him for a long time. Outside the window, the Velkhan city spread in its layers of glass and deep watercolor, a civilization that had been building for 6,000 years and intended to go on building for 6,000 more. Marcus had been on this planet less than a year. He was one human in a palace full of beings who had evolved in conditions that made most of his species' environments look gentle. "My daughter also told me," the Queen continued, "that you caught the beetle she dropped when the guards came through the door." Marcus blinked. He hadn't known the princess saw that. He'd caught the small creature reflexively as it fell from her startled hands during the rush of guards, tucked it gently against the floor. "She said you set it down carefully," the Queen said. "Near the wall, where it would not be stepped on." "It was a living thing," Marcus said. "There was no reason for it to be hurt." The Queen was silent for a moment. "There is a Velkhan concept," she said finally. "Shanvel." "It does not translate precisely. The closest I can offer in your language is the strength that does not need to be seen to be real." She looked at him. "We consider it rare. We consider it, in fact, the highest form of strength we recognize." Marcus said nothing. "I have watched warriors," the Queen said. "I have watched soldiers, commanders, assassins, duelists. I have watched beings who could move mountains of political power with a single word. I have watched beings who could kill with efficiency that would stop your heart to witness." She paused. "I watched you hold an armed assassin against a crystal wall, bleeding, and your primary concern was to look at the exit points and catalogue the threat level for others in the room." "Standard training," Marcus said. "No," she said. "It is not." She turned back to the window. "Standard training produces competence. What you did in that room was something else. It was care, expressed through action, under conditions where most beings revert entirely to self-preservation." She paused. "You did not revert." The city light moved across the crystal floor between them. "I am going to ask something of you," the Queen said. "You may decline. It is outside your original posting parameters and I will make no political difficulty for your government if you decline." "What are you asking, Majesty?" She turned to face him fully, and, for the first time in 11 months, Marcus saw something in the Queen's expression that had no diplomatic layer over it. Pure, unguarded, and, therefore, for a being like her, enormously costly to show. "I am asking you to remain," she said. "Not as a station soldier. As a permanent appointment to my daughter's personal guard." The room was quiet. "The assassination attempt will not be the last," she continued, her voice returning to its controlled register now that the offer was made. "House Valora has factions that extend beyond the conspirators we have already contained. My daughter is the heir. She will face more threats before she is grown, and she will face them regardless of how many walls I build around her." She paused. "She was not afraid of you. In my daughter's entire life, she has been afraid of very little, but she has never been not afraid in a genuine crisis. Until 3 days ago." Marcus thought about the princess and her careful hands around the beetle. The way she'd walked with him without looking back. "Your government would need to be contacted," he said. "Already done." They are awaiting your decision. He looked at the window. The city. 6,000 years of civilization, building still. Yes, he said. The Queen nodded once. She turned back to the window, and Marcus understood the audience was over. He turned toward the door. Sergeant. He stopped. The injury to your temple, she said. Did it heal cleanly? Yes, Majesty. Good. A pause. My daughter asks about it. She wanted to know if it hurt. Marcus almost smiled. You can tell her it didn't. I will tell her, the Queen said quietly, that you said so. The formal appointment took place a week later, without ceremony, in a small administrative chamber deep in the palace.
No attendance. No dignitaries.
A single document signed by both governments, witnessed by the Queen's chief advisor and Marcus's commanding officer via holographic link. The commander's face on the link was professionally expressionless, but Marcus had served under him for 6 years and could read the slight tightening around the eyes that meant the man had something to say and was choosing not to say it publicly. They would talk later. After the link closed, the Queen's advisor handed Marcus a new identification credential, crystal-edged and stamped with the royal seal. The advisor was a male elder who had never shown Marcus anything other than polite, bureaucratic neutrality in 11 months. He held the credential out and said, in English, "Welcome." It was, Marcus understood, significant. He took the credential, tucked it into his breast pocket, and went back to work. His new post was outside the princess's suite in the inner palace. The corridor was quieter than the throne room entrance. Smaller. The bioluminescent panels here were set to a softer frequency that the princess apparently preferred for sleeping, and the light was the color of deep water. On his second night at the new post, the princess's door opened at an hour well past when it should have. She stood in the doorway in sleeping clothes, silver eyes adjusted fully to the dark, looking at him with that complete Velkan stillness. "You are always there," she said. "Yes, Highness. Even when I am asleep." Especially then. She considered this with the gravity that 6-year-olds reserve for things they are working very hard to understand. Why? Marcus looked down at her. "Because threats don't keep schedules," he said. "So neither do I." The princess processed this. Then, "The beetle you saved is in my room. I named it." "What did you name it?" She said a word in Velkan. It took him a moment to translate it fully, and, when he did, something in his chest shifted quietly. "It means the one who held on," she said, with perfect, careful pronunciation. Marcus looked at her. The soft light moved between them. "Go back to bed, Highness," he said. She went. The door closed. Marcus turned back to the corridor, hands behind his back, face forward, and stood in the dark light of a palace 6,000 years old, watching the halls. He did not move from his post until morning.